Hey guys, Akariss here, bringing you a brand new series today, more or less a skill analysis video rather than unit analysis videos. Now, skill analysis videos will try to obviously incorporate some what I feel are meta units using those skills. Now, most of this video will focus, and most of these series in general will focus on Ether Raids, because that is the most competitive mode in Fire Emblem Heroes. But I will likely touch on other modes as well from time to time. So with that being said, if you haven't already, please join the Discord and the Twitter if you want to keep up with my thoughts and such, which I implore you guys to check it out at least, and maybe enjoy the live experience and have your questions answered there. Thanks so much for watching. Let's jump into it. Alright, so today's series will focus on, I'm going to call these the trifecta of close skills, which you would likely put on ranged heroes. I mean, I don't think you can really put it on anything else, but yeah. So ranged heroes, close counter, close foil, and inscribed tome. This is a timely video because close foil was recently released, and I'm going to say right away that I do feel like close foil and inscribed tome, Bowie is gonna get his little bit of appearance in this video, are generally better than close counter. But I'm gonna explain why. There are definitely scenarios where close counter will come up ahead of the other two, but generally speaking, close foil is very good. And inscribed tome, which you probably don't need to know already, is pretty much close foil, but it's Bowie's effect, and it has Raven tome in his tome, which is super strong as well. Now, what does make close foil so much better than close counter to start off is going to be the fact that close foil gives you extra attack. Not necessarily the defense, which is important, but it does matter. And the attack is what's going to make this skill so much better. But the presence, or lack of presence, of dragons in the meta, there are some, but mostly speaking, they're non-threatening and stuff you don't really need to worry about. You'll find out why in a moment. So what I'm going to start off with by saying is, let's take a look at Bronya. So Bronya is a unit I've already covered. There is an individual unit analysis video, which probably a few months ago, but feel free to review it because stuff like that is still relevant. Bronya is a unit that I feel does really well in Astra season because she has low defense, and generally speaking, it's hard to find a good tank that works there. Now, to make Bronya work, you need her to beat the Thrasier matchup. So that includes sniping Thrasier or just winning outright by outspeeding her or nuking her with a special. Now, the build I've shown on the left is a close counter variant, but the thing that you got to really realize between close counter and close foil, and we will move it here, the close foil variant here is you pretty much have the same build, and this is sample of course, but you pretty much have the same build, but you get extra defense, which you values very much, and attack. Most mages in Fire Emblem Heroes really value the defense because they have low defense, high res, most of course, and the attack helps you secure kills, which is very important for Ether Raids. Now, just so I can give you some clear examples of why close foil generally works better than close counter, especially when you consider high level AR meta play, I'm going to take a look at a few examples of very top level AR maps. Now, this is just a small picture of it. I took the top players' maps, not going to say who, but here they are, and I'm going to show you why something like close foil is generally better than close counter. So looking at this example first, you'll see that there's only one dragon right away, which is Duma. And Duma's kind of a joke. If you have, I mean, in this case, he hits the bolt tower and catapult covers lane 3 and 4, so you can't really stop him from his armor boots effect. But if you think about it, the reason why Astra is so good with close foil, and this is why I would recommend, if you're going to use close foil, stick to Astra. Because Sothis is going to probably present you some more problems on Dark Season than Duma would on Astra. So the thing with Duma is he's easily countered by something most players should have. I'm not going to say everyone, but most players should have access to Naga. Naga is important for scoring in Astra Season, and she has a really good support ability, which is Divine Fang. So the reason close foil is so good is because range units like Branya, and as you might also guess, Bronya, and other carries, such and forth. I'm just using some that I use myself or have experience from the community that know about. So the thing is, with these range units, you buff them with Divine Fang, you smite into a trap, and then snipe the dragon that might pose a problem. And in most cases, actually all cases, dragons are melee units. So there are definitely cheeky plays where you can just avoid getting hit by those dragons at all. You just position yourself in a way where you either snipe them using Divine Fang, or you don't get hit by them. Sounds like a pretty simple solution, but realistically that's what it comes down to. Now, one of Branya's better skills in the A slot was just not using close counter at all. It was actually just to use attack speed solo. Now I would probably argue, and this, of course, attack speed solo is just one example, now I would argue that close foil might actually be her best thing, because now she doesn't have to give up those melee matchups. If you look at this particular map, there's no melee threats. I mean, the dancers are the melee units. And someone like Branya, when buffed up, merged up higher, supported accordingly with like Tamari debuffing units or sudden panic and such, however that might be, is really going to weaken the most melee unit situations where using something like close foil wasn't necessary. In fact, you could argue by not retaliating against a melee dancer, you'd actually just leave them alive so you could get up the ethers. So close foil doesn't always become better than something like attack speed solo, but it kind of gives you best of both worlds. Keep your melee matchups for when you run into melee threats, and get that attack and defense, which are pretty good stats. If there was a variant that was like close speed oil, whatever you want to call it, that would probably work the best for someone like Branya, but she appreciates the defense, and that's why like most mages can run this. You know, when I show up Branya or Kronia here, I just mean like vantage strats in general. I mean, this could apply to Matthew, could apply to Soth, could apply to Chad, whatever. I'm just using Kronia and Branya as some high level investments that you can use. So with that being said, both Kronia for vantage strats and the attack is going to help a lot. You snipe your dragons, you make your plays. But, you know, this is just one example of a map. So I did bring some more. Here's another one. Again, your melee threats are little. It's Duma, it's Bike. They're on the front line. So what does that mean? Close foil, you probably won't be able to snipe Bike very well. He's hard to kill, I will admit that. But his threat isn't as scary as it is something like Thrasier, Soth, Lilina, Lysithea, Ophelia in the backlines, where they're going to have charge specials and they're going to hit much harder. So most ranged tanks can afford to just tank the frontline melee unit and snipe potentially something on the front line. So in this case, if you use something like close foil, snipe Duma, end turn. Or snipe Duma or snipe Bike, dance, snipe something else. Those are usual common plays that you can make, and they do work pretty well. Leaving up the melee threats usually are something you can afford to do when using units like this. Another example that I took was, of course, a cav line. So what do you have in a cav line? Bunch of ranged threats. Lif is the melee, could possibly be subbed out for Thrasier, and Duma again in the back line, this time running Wings of Mercy. Realistically, what do you want to do when a unit runs Wings of Mercy? You want to make sure you secure kills. So something like close foil is going to get you those secured kills because it gives you the extra attack to make sure you secure those kills. Someone like Kronia, Branya, again, gonna want that extra attack, gonna want to make sure they get their kills. You look at this team, it's pretty much all ranged threats. So that's why builds that didn't use close counter usually opted to use something else. Distant defense 4, attack speed solo, attack defense solo, whatever. Things that gave you extra stats in the A, because most teams were predominantly ranged threats. Cavline and the first two maps that I showed previously, speaking of examples of this. Now, I'm not going to say the meta won't change and that dragons may become better, but the thing is, most dragons don't have a good player phase. Most of them don't. And ranged are just kind of easier to set up. They have more threat, they're better on defense, so you kind of disable the ability for someone to play into your map. Melee frontliners, you have more plays, range you don't. Now finally, the last thing I'll probably say is a mention to Bowie, because obviously he has Inscribed Tome. Now, Inscribed Tome, close counter, except dragons, same as close foil pretty much, but has a Raven Tome tacked in. The thing with Bowie is he actually has it built into his weapon, and he can afford to run different A slots. So if we look at our different builds, it'll just rotate through them. You pretty much have Bowie with something like bonus doubler, which I wouldn't really recommend because of panic becoming more and more common. And of course, you know, if your buffs don't work because of lulls, dull range, etc., bonus doubler ends up being a dead A skill. So something like Fort Defense Res will be a bit better to make sure that you just get some solid stats and beat some AoE damage. Things that would make close foil worse, and honestly, if you don't run close counter in the A skill, so you run like a solo skill instead, or whatever that might be, is going to be a meta that changes more into melee focused nukes, which aren't that common right now. Resplendent Elwood might change that because he's a very good defense unit, so you might see more of a shift towards melee carry nukes. But for the time being, most maps tend to be range nuke favored, with dancers being melee, sometimes being ranged. And that means that stuff like close foil ends up being pretty solid just to be able to give you that extra attack and defense and covering the few weaker melee options. Bike being an example, Seliph being an example, you know, Snipe Duma, Snipe Sothis, but again, you wouldn't want to use close foil, I think, on Dark. It could still work, but, you know, you'd have to snipe Sothis, because Sothis does have a bit of a player face. She's one of the few dragons. She doesn't even qualify really as a dragon, and therefore, because of her immunity, can have some problems. Okay, guys, so I hope you took something out of this video. Probably a lot of information, but you know, if you didn't pick up everything, feel free to review it again. Leave your questions or comments in the comments below. Give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't already. Visit the Discord, visit the Twitch, and please, you know, support the channel best you can. Thank you for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one. Peace.